listening to LA Talk Radio.
Hey. Oh, yeah.
You're listening to Grace, invigorating talk radio with Anita, only on LA Talk Radio. Discover, inspire, evolve.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Grace Radio Show. It happens every Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. Here we are today with two wonderful guests that I have, Artur Asaduriyan and Gary Gyultemiryan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So we have the co-founders of Chesterton. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Correct.
Chesterton School of Liberal Arts. And Chesterton is a flexible hybrid middle school, private middle school, that focuses on classical education. And their mission is to spread truth, beauty, and goodness. And we're about to learn more about the school because this is a brand new school, barely launching. So I welcome you guys. I want you to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your backgrounds and how you came to found this school.
Sure. I'll go first. My name is Gary Gyultemiryan, as you stated. I studied philosophy at the age of 19 at Biola University, and from which point I became really educated, really interested in education, and then I taught at a Lutheran school I taught religion at a Lutheran school for about 4 years, and then I went out to teach middle school. From which point I decided to pursue a credential, and I received a credential in history from APU. I realized teaching at an online school, at a public school, I realized that education is truly broken and it needs to be fixed or repaired to some extent. And therefore, we started this venture with Arthur and a few other colleagues a year and a half ago. So here we are, having a soft opening this semester, and we're excited.
By soft opening, what exactly do you mean?
So it's friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get our staff acclimated with the curriculum, with the platform, and just sort of this new format of a flex model, which is similar to a university model. Students attend class twice a week, and they do online assignments for the remainder of the week. And this is the future of education, we believe.
Wonderful. And you, Arthur, how did you decide to be involved in all this?
Well, I have a minor in education. My bachelor's degree is in biblical studies. I have a minor in education, and I have a master's degree in philosophy. So originally, I wanted to be a high school history teacher. So I've always been interested in education and what that means. I've done a fair bit of that in the church context. Also an adjunct professor at Eternity Bible College. So I'm around teaching a lot. I probably started kind of trying to get a more hands-on approach as we started having kids, my wife and I. We have 3 kids, and so you start quickly thinking about what that's going to mean and having a robust education. I wasn't very fond of the system of education we have. So it's not even necessarily about the content for me. I think there's a systemic problem.
Right.
Too much bureaucracy and stuff like that. So what's the best way we can do this? Obviously we're privileged enough in this country to, you want to homeschool or private education. You have so many different options. But so just in conversation with friends, and then Gary approached me and said, hey, would you want to take over this kind of theology, philosophy aspect of teaching at the school? And in our conversation, we realized kind of our hearts were set in a similar path. So my job, I guess, changed a bit more.
I didn't know he had a minor in education. I didn't know he was that passionate. I just asked him, hey, you seem to have a philosophy background. Would you want to lead a department? He goes, but I'm also passionate about what you're doing. So I said, okay, this may work out better than I had expected. So
so we've been on that
here
journey.
we are.
And why the name Chesterton?
So G.K. Chesterton is a 20th century early philosopher, writer, journalist, and he was his best friends were adamant atheists, and G.K. Wells was a friend of his, and he was an atheist, and he forged friendships with people that he had vehement disagreements with.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt we live in a society that is not civil and needs to sort of appreciate how it is that people debate and argue and disagree, and how is it that people could just be civilized without being at each other's throat.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the inspirations. The other inspiration was that he's a Renaissance man, and I feel our school should create students who have a Renaissance background.
Right. What are some of the values that are instilled at your school?
Some of the values that we talk about is the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of goodness, the pursuit of beauty, and the pursuit of sort of fostering students who are going to be good citizens, and students who are going to be whole, not necessarily functional. We don't want to create students that are just going to end up going off to create a job, and here you go, here's a skill set, you have a job now.
You wanna kind of mold their character.
We want to mold their character by having them read the great books, by talking about what is it to be whole, what is it to become a person.
That's wonderful. And Arthur, if I may have you speak a little bit, since you've been silent.
So
what's your input on all this, and how do you feel about the values that are instilled at Chesterton?
So I would say we've lost track of what education, the purpose of education is.
Yeah.
Right. We think being educated is having access to lots of information, and the modern world's complete, like the internet's completely thrown that, against everything. I mean, we pay to go to school to learn information that we can read a Wikipedia page on
Google,
and learn for free. So there's a change in our society, definitely. But education for us is not just about information.
Yeah.
Right. So we're really interested in teaching students to be critical thinkers, to question stuff they're taught. I mean, how many times you and I were sitting in, junior high school or high school, and we wanted to question our teachers, but that wasn't really kind of a part of the classroom. It's like we listened, we took notes, we took tests. Did we question them? Did they engage us in that kind of sense? Did they encourage us to disagree with them? So that's what we're about. We really want to develop that kind of a characteristic in our students. When Gary says we want to develop people who are good citizens, what we mean by that is active in society, kind of changers in society, movers and shakers. They don't have to agree with everything we believe as founders of the school, but at least we want them to know why they disagree with us, and be able to articulate that to the best of their abilities.
So you want them to be developed to be thinkers, basically.
That's right. Yeah.
Deep thinkers.
Absolutely.
I love that, guys. I love that. And how is Chesterton different from other private schools and even public schools? Well, we know how they're different from public schools, but how about private schools?
So with private schools, I mean, so you have private schools who use a progressive sort of standard curriculum that is borrowed from public schools, and then they stamp on some religion onto it. And parents think this is the end all be all. It's religious, but it's really not religious, because it's just, okay, we have a Bible class here and we have a cross. Okay, it's just you're paying, I don't know how much you're paying, $1,200 to get the same education as you would in a public school, but now they've just put the Bible over it. And it's also somewhat, there's nationalistic reasons why people go to private schools, because it's Armenian or something, and which is, yeah, that's fine. But as far as it's more of the curriculum. Our curriculum is a classically based curriculum. Some private schools, for example, Trinity, it's up in Valencia. It's a classical school. It's a full-blown classical school, and they have a different curriculum. They have a different model of teaching. The private schools still use, for the most part, a sort of a state curriculum and a sort of a state a state sort of borrowed pedagogy, and where our pedagogy is based on a classical model.
Yeah, I would say a big difference is in regards to the literature that we read. If you pay attention to public schools, even private schools, a vast majority of the literature that's being read was produced within the last 100 years. We want to introduce or reintroduce our students to what Gary said are the great books. So things that have survived the test of time, like Plato's Republic, right? Dante's Inferno. Like we want them to interact with good literature, tough literature, because we think that's actually good for the formulation of your mind. Plus, you get to interact with information that's not contemporary.
Right.
It's not stuff you're used to, right? It's not stuff that's going to kind of echo the society, but it might be countercultural to the way we're used to doing things. So that's a big difference. But also in regards to the system of education, there's a lot of dialogue. Our teachers are not there just to kind of give forth information. They're there to lead dialogue. The students need to learn how to engage one another, not just the leader in the classroom.
Right.
For example, the one thing that is not emphasized in public, or either public or private, is the skill set of speaking and the skill set of listening. So they focus on reading, writing, math, which is rather important, but they sort of neglect the skill set of public debate, speaking up in class, and listening. The skill set of listening isn't emphasized, and that's kind of what we're trying to reintroduce to education.
What are some of the professions that Chesterton kind of prepares students for?
Do you want to take this? Or I would want to say we want to prepare people for all sorts of professions. So we don't want to prepare students just to go into college.
Yeah.
Like, that's not our purpose. We want to educate our students so well that some of them might not feel the need to go to college because their education is of that kind of a level. And if they want to go into a trade, they have the tools to navigate through whatever trade they're going into, start a business, any number of those things. But again, we want them to be well-rounded individuals, not just rule followers, right? Even that, I mean, those of us who've worked with the younger generation, they don't know how to like critically think. You have to actually sit there and tell them do A, B, C, and D, and then they'll be able to do it. But if you tell them to jump from A to D, they're lost.
So with this 40-60 model, do kids still get enough interaction with professors and teachers and faculty?
I mean, the way it's designed is that the online platform, if students have a question, they could just ask the question to their professor or instructor.
So there's like a live chat?
There's a live chat. We use Accelerate, and we use Blackboard, which has these amazing features where students could share their screen. They could upload a PowerPoint. So there's all these features that both the professor and the instructor and the student could borrow and use.
And there is a big department in foreign languages, correct? What are some of the languages that are offered?
So far, it's Spanish and Mandarin, and that's another emphasis. That's another emphasis we have at our school, is that to make sure that we have we immerse students in the language. So it's not just you're going to take a Spanish class. We're going to make sure when you finish our school, you're going to make sure you speak Spanish. We're going to make sure of that. We're not going to just say, take Spanish and get an A, and you just know a few things here and there.
You want to train them in communicating.
Taking them to concerts, taking them to movies, putting them in environments where they're actually using Spanish.
Yeah, so it's not about getting the grade per se. Right?
Yeah.
Like we actually have mixed feelings about even
we don't care about
grading.
grades. Yeah, we've talked about this. Yeah.
That's interesting.
we're
Share a little more about that.
Good, Art.
On the spiel.
Sounds like a school I want to attend. No grades.
I want to attend.
Well,
I just seriously I remember being in school and being so pressured to always perform, stressed out. I always think about kids these days and how much pressure they have, and then you hear of like these other new things like Common Core and things that children are having a rough time with. Do you guys teach in those forms as well?
No, I mean, the good thing with our school is that there is no Common Core.
Yeah.
There is no bureaucracy. We don't have to deal with compliance issues. The state does not come and say, well, are you testing your kids? Well, yeah, we are, but we're not using Common Core. And what Arthur means, by grades are so arbitrary. It's very capricious. I mean, there's grade inflation. I was talking to a parent the other day, and she told me, my kid gets straight A's, but I've never seen her open a book. Made very little sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, she says, because I know I work in the public schools. I know what's going on. There's great inflation. There's pressure to pass students that should not be passed. And
we
this is
just
why
don't
we're
think grades are
they correspond.
giving grades are a good way of knowing whether your student has actually
Yeah.
learned the information. So like,
Because they can always cheat.
or they,
I did.
or so did I. So did I.
Didn't we all? I mean, let's face
I
it.
got through high school by cheating.
Exactly.
And
But not college.
no way, not college, man. Because I love the stuff I learned in college, and I learned how to study.
So cute.
But you know, I think there's different ways of assessing, right? Like, for example, in graduate school, I enjoyed writing papers much more than taking tests. Most of my assessment involved me writing papers, whether it was in class papers I wrote, right, or I went home and wrote.
Because that really gets you to
paper.
think
That's right.
and
But-
analyze and.
Yeah, but taking a test, like a Scantron test, you memorize it maybe the last 2 days, you
Yeah.
show up, you take it, you forget it.
And you forget it immediately.
So what's the point of education if you're going to learn something and forget it?
Yeah.
Or you haven't actually educated something, even though someone could say, hey, look, I got an A. But it's like, do you know a word of Spanish? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, our assessments are verbal and written. So our students have to either write, take a question and just write out in a narrative form, and it's called narrative assessment, or just they have to sort of articulate, in response and answer the question.
We're going to take a quick break, guys, but I would like to invite all of our listeners to check out your website at chestertonschool.org. And then you can also find Gary and Arthur on Facebook and get connected. We'll include those links after the show. You might even find them right now on our pages. But let's come back and talk about where the school is located and how everything's unfolding currently. Thank you.
Need a new car? Auto World Leasing and Sales in Glendale has the best deals all year long. Imagine buying or leasing your favorite vehicle today with zero down, zero hassle if you qualify. They'll have you signed and ready to go. Cause you're a rock star and life has never been more exhilarating. Call Auto World now at 818-246-1500. 818-246-1500.
You're listening to Grace, invigorating talk radio with Anita, only on LA Talk Radio. Discover, inspire, evolve.
Hey, welcome back. This is your host, Anita, with Grace Radio Show. You can find previous shows on graceradioshow.com if you wish to see them and listen to them. Find me on Facebook at Anita Martirosian, on Instagram at Grace Radio Show, on Facebook at Grace Radio Show, Twitter, show_Grace. And we are here with Gary and Arthur, co-directors of Chesterton School of Liberal Arts. Very happy to have them, and they're about to tell us where the school is located.
The school currently is located at a Presbyterian church.
Yeah, in Glendale.
You want to talk about?
Yeah, it's because it's vastly online, where we meet for the classes are at Glendale Presbyterian Church.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so for this year, it's gonna be once a year. Next year, it's gonna be twice a week, and we're looking for more of a permanent location.
You meant once a week?
This year it's once a week, and so it's 2080, and then next year it'll be 4060, twice a week.
I see. And then I remember, Gary, when we were having a conversation over the phone, you mentioned that there is a kind of a high school in the works.
Yeah, so as we move forward, as for example, we have an 8th grader this year. We'll have so she'll be in 9th grade next year. So we're going to go upwards to.
Currently, it's from 6 to 8.
Currently 6 to 8.
Grade 6 to 8.
And then we'll just go up from there.
So we want to grow with our students as they grow, so we can kind of graduate.
Sure.
Full
Are your
year.
kids attending the school?
Yes, my now soon to become 12-year-old is a 7th grader, and today was her first day of the in-person session. And she thought it was really hard, but she liked it. She said,
Nice.
this is very difficult,
Challenging.
But I said, but she liked it. She liked the teachers, and the teachers liked her, so she had a good time.
What's your staff like? How many people is it composed of? The teachers and stuff.
10.
10?
Yeah. I think we have like 10. We have 10 dedicated, wonderful people, and we have a humanities department, and philosophy, and math and science and languages,
History.
history. So yeah, we have a dedicated group of people who are helping and working with us as part of the team.
Wonderful. And your kids?
My kids are too young.
Too young to
Yeah,
attend?
my oldest is 4 years old. So,
Okay.
but
We'll get
definitely-
there in time.
Oh, definitely.
By then, it'll be like the school of the century.
Let's hope so.
By then, we'll buy out the church.
Exactly. So, guys, what's the cost of attending the school? Is it affordable?
It's
How can
definite-
people enroll?
Yeah, it's definitely affordable. It's we kept the tuition low because we want the middle income, the low income to be able to attend, and it's about $400 a month. But if there's a student that they can't afford that, we could definitely talk about it, and they could go online and give us a call, and we could start the paperwork.
Wow, that's
So,
very
yeah.
affordable
Yeah, so
for a private school. That's great.
I want to take pride in this because I think in my first conversation with Gary, I said, Gary, I will be involved with this if basically when we were growing up, our parents would have been able to afford this school, because I realize I have friends sending their kids to like daycare and stuff like that, and they're paying like $1,000 a month, anywhere from 600 to 1,000. And so we don't want the kind of education, high level education, really robust education, just to be for the upper class, you know. And so I said we want to make this affordable for individuals who can later on in life look at this and say, I've had the privilege in America and the education to have a better life than my parents did, and my kids are going to have a better life than I've had. So that's why we try to reduce the cost as much as we can. And so, I mean, it's a good thing that we don't have really building costs in the sense that normal schools do. So we're able to drop it to $400.
We want to provide an elite level education at an affordable price.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And are families very involved? Like, do you see it being a very family-oriented school?
It will be a very family-oriented school. We want to. The one thing we want to do is, I see public schools and even private schools not doing as much, is take parent feedback and have parents be part of the movement, and not just separate them from their kids and say, we'll take care of it from here. They're part of the process.
Right.
They're part of the education process.
Yeah, I think everyone who's been interested or is actually in the school right now, we've sat down with parents, and we've had, and it's not just we, like Gary and I, like our entire staff almost.
Yeah.
We've sat down and had meetings and conversations and entertained what they have to say. We want parents to be to have that kind of a control, because we ultimately think that it is the responsibility of parents to educate their children. It's not the state's responsibility. It's not the church's responsibility. It's not our responsibility as educators. It's ultimately the parents, because those are your children. That's your future.
Right.
That's your investment.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's like it's up to them to reinforce what the kids are learning and what they should learn and all that good stuff. So how are you guys as parents? How does it feel to be a parent of an 11-year-old, you said? 11?
Yeah.
I'm a good dad. How are you?
Yeah, how are you? Is it tough being a parent of 3?
3, and I've been married for 5 years.
Amazing.
So
that's fast.
it is.
Go Arthur.
There's a reason. There's a reason.
There's a reason.
I have 3 brothers, and the age difference between us is about 5 years each. My oldest brother, I'm third, so my oldest brother is 10 years older than me. I'm 15 years older than my younger brother.
So you wanted them to be close.
Yeah,
so they can
I
enjoy
didn't
themselves.
like that. I didn't have a I didn't really become friends with my brothers till I was older than 18, 20.
Yeah.
So I wanted my kids to grow up with kind of that closeness. So that's the reason. I would say I'm a pretty good dad. I think my wife would say that. I'm pretty hands-on.
Yeah.
Very active in my kids' lives, and so I spend a lot of time with them.
I can't be too hands-on, so I have one. He is hands-on. He's right.
You're hands-free.
Exactly.
So I think
I'll provide a school for her.
we have a crisis in this country, I think, when it comes to parenting. We really do, especially as a man. I think a lot of dads, they I don't want to be vulgar here.
No, please, let's get into it.
They're good at producing kids. They're not very good at being dads.
Yeah,
being a father. So we have a lot of fathers that are in the house, but they're absent
But
from
they're
their
not
kids'
involved.
lives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've worked with young people. I would say divorce rate in the United States is right now 60%.
Yeah.
That's just common, whether people are really conservative or liberal. The 60% flows throughout. And so if I'm talking to 10 kids, I assume 6 of them are from homes without a parent.
Yeah.
And then when you start asking questions, you realize about 3 of those, maybe even 4 of those, the dads or moms are absent from their lives.
Wow.
And so you're looking at maybe 1, if you're lucky, 2 individuals who have parents that are really interested in their lives. So I look at it and I say, no wonder everybody's, having serious self-awareness kind of issues and self-esteem issues and stuff like that. So I look at that, and I've seen kind of the worst of that, you could say, working as a pastor. I've seen really nasty situations that could have been avoided 10, 15 years ago, but it wasn't, and so the families are in a crisis. And so I implement that. So when I go home
this
from
is
work,
totally off topic, but as a pastor, are you involved in a church right now?
I am,
as
yes.
a pastor? Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
Don't you think that some people should get counseling before they get married? I always think that's an important thing.
Yeah.
He
So
doesn't-
at our
he
church,
doesn't
To
marry
see
you.
if they're, to have a conversation with the couple and see if they're even compatible.
at our church, we will refuse to marry someone if they don't get counseling,
Yeah.
and it's a minimum of 8 weeks that
Wow.
they get counseling. Absolutely.
That's
So,
amazing. That's good.
yeah, rigorous
good.
counseling.
Yeah.
It's good.
So what are some of the values in your marriage that you keep up with?
Honesty, transparency. I mean, those might be the same thing.
Yeah.
Tough conversations. So my wife's a type A personality, so she doesn't hold back. And I'm a type A personality, so there's a lot of arguments.
Oh, two of that.
Huh?
Is she listening?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. So God's given us my son. We have to watch it because sometimes we'll get into like heated debates, and then my son will be like, "Stop arguing," or like, "We're not arguing. We're just having a conversation."
Yeah.
But yeah, we're, I think we're growing in that because here's a value. All right, I told my wife, and this is gonna sound really bad to people who haven't heard it, but when we're getting married, I said to my wife, I said, I don't love you, I want to love you. Now that didn't mean I didn't have feelings and care, obviously, for her, but for me, love is a verb. And you grow to
only a
love people.
philosopher would say that.
Only a philosopher would say that's right. And so I told her, I want, by the end of my life, I want to love you more than I do now as, a 27-year-old guy. A lot of times we look back and say, oh no, what was it like when we met each other and loved each other? I'm like, man, I look at 80-year-olds and they hold hands and walk down the street. That's what I want, right? Not.
And it takes a
we
lot
live
of
separately.
work. I mean, it's daily practice.
Yeah,
Listening, talking,
hurts.
sharing, expressing.
Yeah. I think we need to be okay with being hurt, and maybe this goes back to what Gary was saying about being civil in our disagreements, right? Like we have a society that functions off of bumper sticker kind of phrases, and we function in our marriages like that, and our political allegiances like that, and so it's not very healthy.
No, we're quick to dismiss. So instead of really sitting down, talking face to face, a lot of text messaging goes on, a lot of messaging, which actually should be face to face.
Yeah, so I communicate, verbally very well. My wife she teaches English as a second language, so she loves the written word, and so that was one of the first conflicts we had. We'd have arguments, and she would write me a letter, and then I would want to talk about it. And so we found some kind of a compromise.
Go back to your computer, right?
Yeah. Well, it was good because I learned that it's good to kind of cool down and then have, write to one another. But she also learned it's good to kind of sit face to face, look into each other's eyes and say, here's where I disagree with you. Let's do it this way.
Yeah.
So,
Gary, you're awfully quiet. How is your?
I told you.
What's your input? What's how was your tactics in marriage?
To go back to Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
She talks about how in a relationship, you make each other, the wife, and you just sort of you give up something and you make each other better. And that's like becoming a person almost. Like you daily, you there's an end and you want to go to that end. There's a purpose, a telos to a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say whether it's in marriage or with children or even in education, we need to value the disagreements we have,
Mm-hmm.
the differences we have,
Yeah.
and to use that. Like my wife has strengths that are weaknesses of mine. My kids have strengths. Like I'm already starting to see that, they have strengths where those are weaknesses of mine. And so as a father, I want to be changed by my children. I want to learn from my children, right? I want them to learn from me, but I realize I don't know everything.
Let's talk about that a little bit after our break. I want to go into a quick break, but when we come back, let's talk about what we have to learn from children, because a lot of adults think that they should be the authority, and that's it. The kids are kids, and they want to dictate, but really we have so much to learn from their innocence and their purity. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Need a new car? Auto World Leasing and Sales in Glendale has the best deals all year long. Imagine buying or leasing your favorite vehicle today with zero down, zero hassle if you qualify. They'll have you signed and ready to go. Cause you're a rock star and life has never been more exhilarating. Call Auto World now at 818-246-1500. 818-246-1500.
You're listening to Grace, invigorating talk radio with Anita, only on LA Talk Radio. Discover, inspire, evolve.
Hey guys, welcome back to Grace Radio Show. I have with me here Gary and Arthur, co-directors of Chesterton School of Liberal Arts, located at the Presbyterian Church of Glendale. If you'd like more info, go to their website, chestertonschool.org, and you can learn more about their mission, about the staff, the curriculum, everything. So before we went to break, I brought up, how parents think that they should always dictate to their kids. They have nothing to learn from them. Like, not everyone, but some parents have this attitude. What is it like as educators for you when you're in a classroom full of kids? I mean, do you feel like you're learning a lot from them when you're engaging in debates and teaching them different things? Do you get inspired by children?
The one unique quality kids have, and I've noticed it amongst students, is they have especially the smart kids, they could teach other kids who don't understand information in ways that the other kid is going to understand it, and the way that sometimes they almost explain it better than you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's good. I mean, sometimes you have those kids in the classroom who are able to understand you and understand the other kid, another student, and explain it to them.
Children have a natural sense of wonder, right? And classical education heavily focuses on encouraging that instead of, kind of killing it, which again, this is one of my other beefs with, I would say, what I call government education, is that you're forced to sit and not move and not talk and not interact and listen to one person. Again, I don't know where I know where it came from, but it's bad. And so I would say one of the things to learn is the kind of enthusiasm kids have. Just tell a child a story. I sit my daughter down and I say, I just make up some stories for her and I say, there was a dragon, and her eyes just open up and she's like, oh, dragon, right? And you can learn from that. Like to view life in general with awe, to view the beauty in life. Or whatever that may be. That may be me sitting and looking at a very beautiful night sky and say, man, this is amazing, right? There's a certain awe in this vast universe. Here we are, having the ability to contemplate and self-reflect and all this stuff. And children really bring this to the table. They're just naturally like this, If I show my son, around the house, we find some kind of a cricket or a spider or something like that. Next thing you know, he's like running around looking for them. It's that kind of wonder, because education is happening. You don't need to force it. Right. It's already there.
And sometimes I feel middle school stymies that creativity.
I would say so.
It's so regimented, and you have so many rules and and issues of compliance, and then you have all the drama.
So you don't have those pressures at Chesterton as much? It's a more relaxed atmosphere.
More relaxed. The teachers are relaxed. They're and they're a lot friendly, and it's not. Our funding does not depend on testing scores. doesn't depend on whether you attend. We're not gonna harass you. Why isn't your kid in school? When it's really about the ADD dollars and not. And so we're not. That we're not. We our goal is, if you come to our school even now, in our infancy, we will provide your student a wonderful education, a better education than he or she's receiving currently. I could guarantee that much. I can't guarantee bells and whistles, no prom,
maybe along the way.
Maybe.
maybe no grad night. Yeah, maybe later.
Yeah.
No theater department, not now, but in due course that'll come. But we could guarantee you, they will be well educated relative to public schools.
Do you guys offer any extracurricular courses? Any electives other than languages?
Not now, but
Not
I
at the moment.
know second semester and maybe next year working on bringing a music teacher and an art teacher to teach art and music. And I know that's something that the public schools are not focusing on anymore.
Well,
They're not focusing on liberal arts anymore.
Right.
Here's the way I would put it is, we realize there's people who are doing these things much better than we would as an educational kind of organization. So there are already art schools, there are already music schools that have their entire mission focused on that. So one of the things we want to do is partner with individuals like this and say, hey, we can bring you in as a component. If a teacher says, yeah, I want my son or my daughter to learn the violin, say, okay, here are experts in that. And we will connect you with them and do our extracurricular activities through them. Sports teams. These things already exist. And again, there's people who are experts in it. We realize kind of what we're really good at and what other people are really good at. And we want to partner with people. So we have all sorts of kind of ideas that we can bring in. Like one of my things is teaching young people to program. And so we want to bring those things in and give them those.
Do you guys have computers on site at the school?
We do. I mean, each student has their laptop, and we have computers. So
If they don't, we'll
provide them one.
And what about the books? What sort of books do they have? Is there a
Interesting.
bookstore? Or do they purchase it from Amazon?
We purchase the books, and we purchase the books, and some of the curriculums online. For the math and science, that's online. But we purchased their history book and their literature books, so they have those with them. And that's one thing we didn't want for it to be electronic. We want the student to actually have the book in hardcover form and to read it.
We don't want them. We don't want young seventh graders to be staring at a screen more than they already are.
Thank God.
So that's part of the reason why we wanted to put the hard books in them and say, hey, for your class assignment, you have to read this book. Go sit on a couch. Go sit at whatever, at a park.
Get some tea. Get some tea.
Sit down. Whatever the environment and time is. Even time. Like, we don't realize that people learn better or worse during certain times. For me personally, 12 to 4 is a downtime. I'm not functioning very well during the day. So I function very well